Welcome back to the Real News Network. I'm Jessica Devereaux in Baltimore. We're continuing our discussion with our guest, Baba Aye, to discuss the suicide bombings this week in Nigeria, which killed at least 49 people. The news comes days after Nigeria's ex-security chief was accused of stealing up to $2 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B, that was intended for the Nigerian army. Corruption in Nigeria has been seen as a long-standing obstacle in the fight against Boko Haram. Now joining us from Côte d'Ivoire to give us some more context is our guest, Baba Aye. Baba is the national convener of United Action for Democracy, the largest rights-based coalition in Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us, Baba.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
So, Baba, many blame the corruption in the military as being the major impediment to the fight against Boko Haram and providing security to the Nigerian people. The current president, Muhammad Buhari, who won elections back in March, he ran his presidential campaign on a promise to address this issue. And after a recent visit to Yola this week, he declared that the government was close to defeating Boko Haram. But critics say that the Nigerian army isn't getting the proper weapons and ammunition to fight Boko Haram. So do you see corruption as playing a part in dealing with security? And how effective or serious has Buhari been in addressing corruption?
Corruption is not just a major problem in Nigeria. It is actually systemic. It's a mechanism for what you could describe as perpetual primitive accumulation and distribution of wealth from our collective patrimony by members of the ruling class, different sections of it. Buhari's campaign platform represented not just an attempt at the change of an administration. Essentially, it was an attempt at bringing about a transition, a regime transition. But I see that getting stuck for several reasons. Several reasons. You're talking of in regards to fighting Boko Haram and the military, but when you look at virtually every facet of the national life, and you look at the people around Buhari, you look at even himself, he's been touted as being non-corrupt. I was actually shocked when people said, "Oh, he owns just 30 million naira. That is not much." But this was the same country where the first prime minister did not even have a house of his own. And so you see, a lot of things have changed over the years in which corruption has become almost taken as normal, really. And regarding the army, the fact of the matter is there has been a lot of motion, but I will say little movement. Corruption is one of the reasons why. But beyond corruption, also, there's the fact that the I think they had an illusion. The fact that rolling back Boko Haram from territories it signifies getting closer to victory. I think that is missing the point in so many ways. Until August last year, this was when it was inspired by the forays of ISIS. Winning territories was never part of Boko Haram's mechanism of struggle. It had always been more of hit and run guerrilla attacks, suicide bombings, and that is what it is back to. So I think with regards to corruption, it can hardly be addressed as aptly as Buhari gives the impression it would be addressed with the nature of people that fill his cabinet. He kept the whole country waiting for like half a year, saying he wanted to get a new crop of ministers. People look at it, what's the difference? These are the same politicians that have been there all this while. The most powerful of the ministers, Babatunde Raji Fashola, who controls three power, works, and housing. He came up with a website which he said was built with 78 million naira and had no apologies for that. So it's not just the military. It's difficult to keep the military corruption free when the politicians' hands are steeped to their elbow in corruption.
Okay, now we have to mention the role of the West in all of this too, Baba. Last month in October, President Obama, he sent about 300 soldiers to Cameroon to help the regional forces that are fighting Boko Haram. How much territory, first of all, does Boko Haram currently hold? And do you see the U.S. military presence as a positive development or potentially destabilizing factor?
One, Boko Haram holds very little territory now. Between August last year and March this year, it controlled two-thirds of the municipalities in Borno State and a good chunk of that in Yobe and the three states under the state of emergency, and which are its forte. But right now, even before Buhari, and I think this is very, very significant, and we have to stress it, it's not some victory by Buhari in carrying out his campaign manifestos. Before May 29, when Buhari was sworn in as president, Boko Haram had been largely routed from the territory it controls. And apart from Sambisa Forest, it really does not control any piece of territory. But it has cells. Kano, for example, it never got even close to controlling Kano. See the suicide bombing. Every just a few months, 2 months back, Boko Haram activities were found even in southern cities of Lagos, of Port Harcourt in the south, of Enugu in the southeast. So you are facing terror beyond just the regular control of it. Now, with regards to the United States, it can never in any way lead to stabilization. And I think the United States has been careful regarding putting troops on the ground, and it says these are to train. The United Action for Democracy has spoken against this time and again. It actually started with when the Chibok girls were abducted on April 15 after the twin bomb in Yaya. And they haven't really been able to help much. I don't really see they have been able, but if there are more of Americans, it will only result in the deepening of anger there from beyond even the issue of support for Boko Haram, because the history of America's presence, people can see it. Afghanistan, Iraq, it hasn't been with any benefit for the working people. It has only made conflicts deepen and made life worse for the working class people.
And when you say benefits, I mean, are you talking about building schools, hospitals, infrastructure? Is that what you mean?
No. When I talk of benefits, they are soldiers. They claim to want to come and stabilize, bring about peace. So I mean that one, peace is not won, and two, rather, apart from the deepening of conflict, what you get is that you also have the furtherance of dependence by the state concerned, in this instance, Nigeria, to United States imperialism.
Okay, let's switch gears,
There
Baba.
can be no benefits from it, yeah.
I hear you. Let's switch gears and talk about alternatives, because this can all be very depressing, just talking about all the issues. What should U.S. policy then look like if it was truly interested in stabilizing Nigeria, making sure the Nigerian people were rid of the presence of terrorist groups like Boko Haram? What specific policies should President Obama support?
There's a saying where I come from that if you are told that an animal with two horns will kill you, definitely it cannot be a snail. We really don't see much that it's not the United States that can help to guarantee peace or end terrorism. I seriously think that that challenge rests on the Nigerian working people. And relating it to your question, the good thing is there's a revival going on in the labor movement, which I see as in the unfolding period being very, very critical to the way forward. The Nigerian Labour Congress, which has just come out from some schisms after its 11th delegate conference in March, is spearheading stronger ties with the radical civil society movement and is looking quite closely at the issue of rebuilding the Party of Labour. And I think that these are very, very significant developments, because when you look at it, in the early 1980s, when you had the Maitasine movement, it was the closest to what you have in Boko Haram now. It's part of why it didn't last this long was that you had a stronger labor movement. And there are a number of documentary evidence to the fact that in Kano, for example, the strength of parties like the People's Redemption Party, which was a radical party, undermined possible support for Maitasine from the exploited and oppressed immense majority of the population. So I don't see the way forward. I don't see the resolution in a progressive manner of the conundrum presently regarding terrorism, in particular, and the situation in northeastern and Nigeria generally, being something to do with the United States policy. I think that our fate lies in our hands. And I think that with what is going on in the labor movement now, we're rising up to the task of seizing that firmly too.
All right, well, we'll certainly be checking up on that. And Baba Aye, thank you so very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It's been my pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.